Welcome to Everyone Has a Story podcast. It's a scary thing today how we actually see things. As individuals, we are all conditioned from a very young age that we are supposed to see things a certain way. Now, those things that we see, those filters could be from our parents, our teachers, our mentors, our first boss, whoever. But the case is that they're not always ideal. Now, I'm going to take, for instance, I love challenges. My past, I can be challenged almost anything, and I'm going to attempt it if it's not really life-threatening. So probably about 20 years ago, I'm on a business trip, and I get invited out to go rock climbing. Now, typically anything in nature outside, I'm there. And I always wanted to try it. We were going on some, great extreme climb. So I said, yes, I'd love to join. And after a few pitches and a few different routes, I became hooked. I wanted to do this more often than I ever could. But my second time was too far away. And so when I really got that next invitation, I really wanted to jump in and stay as long as I possibly could. And it just kept getting more addicting that I wanted to keep trying different routes. So about 2 or 3 years later after that, I'm talking to one of my newly members of my family, found out that he was a very good and experienced rock climber. So we said we should climb together. Well, he lives up in Rapid City, South Dakota, which is about 2 or 3 hours away from Devil's Tower in southeastern Wyoming. Now, I don't know if you guys know what Devil's Tower is, but if you look up the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you'll see where Richard Dreyfuss in his front room made a replica of Devil's Tower with a bunch of mashed potatoes. It's this mystical place in southeastern Wyoming, and I'll tell you, it is out in the middle of nowhere. But it's known for many, many, many different routes that people can rock climb all the way to the top. And it is probably, it's probably a good 4 or 5 hour climb for anybody, unless you're really, really experienced. We got a guide, and I'm now at the bottom looking up, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to be something I've never done before. It was a different type of climb. Am I really up for this challenge? And every time it seemed like we went from one pitch to another, I kept really questioning myself because it just seemed like it was more and more daunting. And then all of a sudden, I get to the very, very top, which I really didn't know I was there until someone had to explain to me that I'm actually on the top of Devil's Tower, that all of a sudden I realized that I did it. And all those negative voices inside of me were really, all they were just negative voices. That one little devil on my left shoulder telling me, you can't do this. Why are you even trying to do this? And I use that as an example because today, social media, our work environments, there's so much negativity, and we are being conditioned day after day after day to see things a certain way, which typically is very, very negative. And today I want to offer a solution. My guest today, Hank Wasiak, and I are going to talk about a principle, a mindset, a new theory on what is called asset-based thinking. And I think that if there's ever a time in our world, especially in the business world, that we need to have a little bit more positive thinking, a little bit more optimism, and just a little bit more fun, this is really a good solution. So with that being said, let me introduce Hank Wasiak. Hank, welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
It's great to be here. Nice to see you. Nice to see that you came down from the mountain, by the way. That's good.
Absolutely.
I would have never pegged you for a rock climber, but
well, sometimes, looks are deceiving, right?
To your point, everybody has a story that you don't know.
Absolutely. So Hank is an adjunct professor at the Marshall School of Business at the University of Southern California, and he's a partner of the Concept Farm. But more importantly, Hank is one of those people that if you're someone my age or maybe a little bit younger, would really get to know because he was part of the advertising industry back in New York City, back in the 60s and 70s and so on, that created some of I think, the ideal and more memorable advertisements. And if you ever get a chance to read his book, and we're going to talk about that, Change the Way You See Everything, there's also another book that he just published that needs to be read by a lot of people because it will bring back a lot of great memories. It will introduce maybe people who don't have those memories to a whole new world of business and marketing, and really get a chance to see and hear what it's like to be behind the scenes of all those major campaigns. But anyway, Hank, welcome. And tell us a little bit more about you before we get into the podcast.
Okay. Thanks. Well, the more about me is I started my life in Brooklyn and New York, and never thought I would be where I am today. Quite frankly, there's stories throughout that book that just every time I go look at it and see it, it was very cathartic experience for me. But I was a street kid. I wound up going to college because I was told I had to, or I was going to get in a lot of trouble. I was very fortunate I'm a product of Catholic education, by the way. So I went through a lot of tough love there. And I was very fortunate to have a brother, a Zavarian brother in high school, that just pushed me to go to college. And I did. And I went there kicking and screaming against it. And I had to pick a major in college. I went to Pace College. I had to pick a major. And I didn't know what I wanted. I was the first one going to college in my family. And I went, accounting, nah, not for me. Next, advertising, why not? I picked that serendipitously, not going through all the rigor that kids go through today. And it just turned out to be a blessing. I loved it, I gravitated to it. And I've been in advertising and marketing for the last 55 years. I was lucky as heck. And I started out in the agency business. I worked at night for a master's degree, got that so I could teach. I always wanted to teach. So I always had, as the kids call it today, a side hustle, teaching at night in everywhere I ever worked, from New York to Louisville, Kentucky, and Florida and other places. So I taught at 7 universities. Been around everything you want to see at marketing, with big companies, small companies, etc. And here I am. And the other 2 things about me you should know is I am a Reiki master as well, because I was burning myself out traveling a lot, and I found Reiki as a wonderful mind channeling thing for me, and it worked. And the other thing I am is I'm an absolutely proud, gracious, and full of gratitude volunteer with the American Heart Association. That's my give back time for the last 20 years. So that's a snapshot. I know it's a little bit longer, but that's me.
Yep. And you're an ad man, so I wouldn't expect anything less. So let's get into the podcast now. You wrote a book with your partner titled Change the Way You See Everything. So when we were talking about change the way you see everything, who is you?
Well, the you is meant to be you, our reader, of course. But for me, when I was writing that book at the time, it really was about me, because I was what you'll see we call in the book a deficit-based thinker. I grew up as the problem guy, fix problems. And I was at a time in my life where I just went, I basically was told I kicked into early retirement when I didn't want to. I was very negative about it. I happened to meet Dr. Kathy Kramer, who is a business coach at our agency, the Concept Farm. And she introduced me to asset-based thinking, and I loved it. And she said, why don't we do a book together about it? You do it from your perspective, and I'll do it from my coaching perspective. And that's what we did. So it transformed my life completely. And it really is meant to be a book that and a way of thinking, asset-based thinking, that you use every day in your life. Once you have it embedded in you, it'll bubble up all the time.
So let's talk about those individuals who desperately need this, like we all do. And why should something like this type of new filtering process, this new mindset called asset based thinking, why should it really matter today more than any other time? Or does it?
Well, it matters all the time. And so, it'll get dialed up or not. But today, especially in this world of social media, and I talk about it in my classes all the time, and cancel culture. Just think of that word, cancel culture. Who the heck should have anything that they do cancel? Just think about that. And we have generations coming up learning all of that. And in today's world, you really have to, as we say, take a pause. Just pause, step back, and understand that you have the opportunity in your mind to control all that. And it doesn't come easy, and it still doesn't come easy for me. It's a discipline that you have to work at every day in the moment. But once you do, you can you can tune out all that noise, or most of that noise, and then tune in to the assets that you see in situations. And when we talk about asset-based thinking, we talk about it, and we have our SOS. There are assets hidden in plain sight in yourself, others, and situations. And that's a mindset that you use, whether or not you are facing the deficit-based side of your mindset in yourself, or it's coming at you for others, or you're thrown into situations. You learn to move that aside, go past it, and find the assets that are there, because they're always there. I guarantee you they're always there.
So give us a new, well, a different version, a modern day view of really what asset based thinking is. I know what I think of it as, but why don't you, being the author of this book, why don't you give us a real, really full understanding so we can all wrap our arms around and say, yes,
Yeah.
that's what is necessary right now.
Okay. I like to call it the power of positive thinking on steroids, but it's more than that. It's asset-based thinking focuses you in the moment. The power of positive thinking, you're looking out at the future and all those things. Asset-based thinking really makes you focus on the power now, which is I think something that you really need to do today. And you needed to do that in your rock climbing, didn't you? When you were going up that mountain. But asset-based thinking, in simple terms, always lets you look at the opportunities, hidden situations, rather than the problem. You don't avoid problems. You learn how to go past them and find the opportunities. You have a can versus a can't. You don't have a can't attitude. You have a I can attitude. So it's a special way of looking at everyday life all the time. And it changes directly in your mind. It changes your mind directly every day. So it's a concrete cognitive practice that identifies those assets in self, others, and situations. And Dr. Kathy Kramer, who passed my positivity muse and partner, who I love to death, she passed away about 3 years ago. And I can still hear her talking to me and with what asset-based thinking is. And she was one of the best, coolest business coaches around. And that's how she perfected it. So it is looking at everything in the moment. And there's lots of principles that we go through in the book about things that you can do to and exercises, and maybe we can chat about a couple of those. But look at it this way: none of us are born asset-based thinkers or deficit-based thinkers, right? We're born who we are. But the world in general, and especially today, pushes you to the deficit side of thinking. It just does. You can't help it. It just comes at you. Today, it's a tidal wave of that stuff. So you're not one or the other. And there's a way that I call, once you get asset-based thinking into your mindset, and as we did in the first book and the second book, it's a remote control. You think of it as a remote control for your life. You control the on and off switch, ABT, DBT, and you control the channels that you want to look at and see. And it's a pretty simple analogy there, but it really works today. It really can.
We've all met individuals or seen individuals like professional athletes. We've seen our neighbors, we've seen our coworkers who go from being at the top of happiness, they're at the top of their career, they're just really in the flow, and then all of a sudden they drop out of nowhere, and you never see them again, you never hear of them again. And so let's now take this group of individuals who are now part of the world of business, they're part of the business community, and let's now really focus on those individuals. So how does it apply to a business or an organization who are made up of individuals who can either choose to have the asset-based thinking or the deficit-based thinking?
Well, first and foremost, it takes a leader. It takes a leader to do that. And it doesn't mean you have to be the CEO or in the C-suite. You should be. It's great if you can, but you've got to be the leader of yourself in those situations. And it is in today's business world, and especially in marketing, what I teach, you must be looking at the positive side of what you're selling, your career, and how high is up, and your customer relationships. You really should be looking at it at that from a positive asset-based thinking point of view. You're all here in business, and we do it all the time in marketing, but also just for yourself. You do what's called a SWOT analysis. You ever heard that? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And whenever you do them, and you do them on yourself, you fill up that weakness and problems, boxes real fast. And when you get into the strengths and opportunities section, you're kind of struggling with that. The way I teach it in business and the way I use it myself is 5 to 1. For every time I put down a problem, it's got to be a big problem, I put down 5 opportunities. And from the same thing with weaknesses and challenges. Yes, you don't avoid problems, but as I say, pick the biggest badass, excuse the language, badass one that you can solve. Put that down, and then put down 5 opportunities next to it. It's a great discipline. It works in business, it works in your career, and it's also a good way when you're in meetings, to channel that meeting that way.
So in the world of business that I'm familiar with, there's always 2 familiar challenges. One is that every business owner, every manager has been taught that if you're going to try something new, you have to really focus on the ROI, the return on that investment on doing that. And then the other, which is probably even harder to, really quantify, is the fact that I believe that the only person who really wants change in their life is a wet baby. And so as adults, sometimes we need help with changing that diaper. But with those 2 challenges, tell us what are the potential positive experiences. What's going to be the positive outcomes from turning your organization, your group of employees, your team, your family into asset-based thinkers?
Well, the one of the benefits is you will make more money in a business, profit, because your focus, it naturally gravitates you to that. And then also in your personal life, your profit will be your return on your happiness and your satisfaction. And the ROI is important. Every time we have an action, we want to make sure that there's some type of return on it. And in business, it's usually looked at in terms of financial returns. And in personal life, you look at it as a return on, did I make this relationship better? did I make a relationship better? And I like to, in the world today, especially social media today, with social media today, there's ROI, which is return on investment. And then I add another E to it. I add two E's. One is return on engagement. How am I engaging with people? And that's not meant to be just a buzzword. Am I engaging? Are we engaging? Are we making eye to eye and really talking to each other? And the other one, which believe me, in marketing is critical, and in business and critical, is return on empathy. If you really must be empathetic, and you can't fake that. You either are or you aren't. And return on empathy is really powerful. When you get empathetic with the person that you are talking to, whether they be a business colleague, your kid, your wife, whatever it might be, and that comes back at you, nothing better.
And that's very, very well said and very timely, because as you know, as most of us know, there was not only the COVID pandemic that we just had to experience, unfortunately, but also that pandemic brought on the quiet quit, the great resignation, where, as you just very well articulated, the world of business has been turned somewhat upside down in a way that is necessary. And I am all for it, because as a business consultant, as a business owner, I have seen where a lot of time and effort have been on how to communicate with your customers better. But the problem is that if you don't take those same practices to yourself and to how you talk to yourself and to your employees, no matter how much training you give them, they are going to start to emulate what they feel and how they feel and what they experience in their workplace environment. And so everybody wins. And so when I hear the word RO or the term ROI, especially after doing something like this, if the owner is experiencing asset-based thinking and really delivering it, and his team is experiencing it from him or the rest of the other managers and team leaders, then the true beneficiary besides the team is going to be the customers. And you know darn well that if customers feel like they're the recipient of well-intentions and good business strategies and good customer relations, they are going to tell other people. So, and we all know, even though you are the marketing guru, the best customer is one that's been referred. Yeah. And so let's talk about now the inner workings of the owner, the manager, and the team, the frontline employees, whoever they may be and whatever their role may be. Tell us some solutions, how someone can listen to this podcast and say, you know what, I'm going to take some of these solutions that Hank just described, and I'm going to either reach out to Hank, reach out to the book, or start putting this into play right now. So let's talk about some of those solutions that can be implemented sooner than later in that workplace environment.
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that by the way, I just did a video on it for my MBA course 2 days ago about it. The one thing that is essential and critical is no compromise. The customer is the North Star, period. First, last, always. Nothing else matters. Nothing else comes first. Excuse me. Other things matter, of course. That's it. That attitude must be inculcated into everyone in the company. And then once that, everyone gets it and they know that, you then start creating a company culture that buys into it. And today, company culture, the way leaders motivate their team is more better currency than media dollars today. Because brands live in glass, businesses live in glass houses, no secrets, you can't hide, and you can't hide from your employees. Not that I say you need to be radically transparent with your customers. Yes, no secrets, be out there and let everyone know what you stand for, because you can't hide from it. And once once you do that and recognize that you are there in service for the customer and everyone buys into that, your best asset are employees that go out and evangelize for you. And that not, and they don't have to do it necessarily on social media, just on that phone call with a service call or whatever it might be. You can get a sense when someone buys into that mission and purpose. And the way I think people should look at it, if they're having difficulty with that, is step back from it and say, all right, let me pull back from the day to day and make sure yes, I'm committed to the customer's the North Star. And then let me step back and make sure that I have a set of company values, my higher values, the reason I exist in the world today. What is it? And, it's not all about kumbaya and CSR. Yes, that's part of it. But why do you exist? What's the difference you're going to make in your customer's life? And that's rational and emotional and empathetic. And you really have to step back from that and make sure you've articulated it as a leader and that everybody understands it. Then from that, everything else in your mission and purpose, in your mission and your marketing plans get lined up in service to that. And it's got to be in real language and be sincere. There's a word used today, you'll hear it, and I'm sure, authenticity. It's my pet peeve word that every time I hear it, I cringe, because when I hear businesses saying, we're going to really try to be authentic, or we're really, we're working on being authentic. That's BS. You either are or you aren't. You don't practice it, you do it. You either are sincere in who you are and you aren't. And once you try to put up that facade of being authentic, first, the customer sees through that and your employees sees through that. So if it's not sincere and real, don't do it. You're just going to come back and kick you in the butt.
Well, all I can say is hoorah and hallelujah. That was well said. And I hope that when you just did that taping a couple days ago for your MBA class, that you had the great USC marching band playing their fight song behind you as you just said those words, because those were powerful words, and I can't thank you enough for that, Hank. I really can't thank you enough for being a friend, a colleague, and I love your books. And I know that we're going to explore all your books on later podcasts and at my book club, but I can't thank you enough. But I think you have one more little ounce of passion in you. Leave us with one more little bit of inspiration and advice to really take us home.
Well, one, I have a couple, but the one really is, or everything we just talked about, be sincere with yourself, and do that. And then I've had to come to grips with that with myself an awful lot. And the other thing that I tell students is that in my life and in their life, mentors matter so much. Mentors are really there. They are there. God gives us mentors to really help us along. And it's really important. And the way you can get that mentor mentality is just think of this, where we like to express it in the book, live your legacy now. Don't leave a legacy, live your legacy now, and make sure you're giving that everything you do is giving towards that legacy. And you can do it. And it just takes small shifts. Small shifts make seismic differences. And your last thought is, we all hear our term, is the glass half full or half empty? And we all know, boy, they're half empty people and they're half full. It is the absolute wrong question to ask, because it's both. It's always both. And you must focus on what's in the water, what's in the glass. Don't worry about what's not in there yet. What's in the water now, just put more of it in. Keep on putting it in consciously and unconsciously. And the water will rise and rise, and it'll be full and overflow.
Well, I knew that you would take us home with some really good insight and positive inspiration. So thank you again. Hank, how can someone reach out to you or learn more about asset-based thinking and you in your book?
I have a website, hankwasiak.com. I also have another one called thewisdomguy.com. And I have a link tree which I've done, which has social sites and all of my web pages, which I can get to you and we can put in there. Or I have a phone call or whatever, anytime is fine with me. I don't mind sharing my number with people.
And I tell you what, I can attest firsthand that if you call Hank, he will pick up, and if he doesn't pick up, he will call you back very shortly. And just know that the conversation is going to be truly authentic. So, Hank, if you're not
there goes that authentic word again.
Absolutely, I know it. And so, if you are not too opposed to it, for the people who are actually looking to want to have conversation with you, if you want to share your phone number here, that'd be great for the audience.
And the best, a way to do it that's better than that is my email, and then just say here it, and then send me an email, hankwasiak@gmail.com. Say you want to chat, boom, and then I'll send you back a response. All the numbers and everything will be with it. But I promise you I will respond.
And I can attest to that. He will. Hank, again, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Remember, the glass half full and half empty. It's what's in the glass. Thanks.
You bet. My podcast wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for my sponsors and my great supporters. So let me take this opportunity to thank each and every one of them. First of all, I want to thank Rebecca at Custom Bookkeeping and Accounting, delivering trustworthy bookkeeping services since 2003. Dave and Dara at Virtues Matter, making this world a much happier place to be with their Virtues card apps, coaching, and workshops. Stephen at Buller Accounting, giving business owners depth and insight to their numbers. Eric and his team at IvyCat Web Design, the real superheroes of web development and design. Jennifer and Jean at the Seavers Real Estate Team, serving Pierce and Kitsap counties with their home buying and selling needs. Maury at the Maury Method, the world's only brainwave entrainment engineer, helping everyone have more clarity, less stress, and overall better brain health. Priya at Pivot My Profit, helping individuals and businesses have better control of their finances and more money at the end of their day. Melissa at the Soul Vibe Energy High, the queen of the aha moments, helping individuals find those holes in their cups, repair the hole, and gain back their positive energy. And finally, Rick at West Sound Recording. You talk, they do all the rest. Thank you, Rick, for all your efforts with the production and editing of my podcast.